Hi, I'm Rose Stewart and I'm here today to talk to you about irritable bowel syndrome. If you're here and you're listening to this video, you probably know a little bit about irritable bowel syndrome, otherwise known as IBS. Quite a common condition which causes pain and discomfort in the abdomen and is associated with changes in bowel habits. IBS patients may describe their pain and discomfort in a range of ways, from slight sharp pain, cramping, bloating and fullness, or even IBS has a range of triggers, from a specific food trigger to symptoms that follow a meal, so the act of eating causing pain and discomfort, and also emotional stress. Recent research has shown that many symptoms of IBS are related to hypersensitivity of the nerves found in the walls of the gastrointestinal tract. These nerves are distinct from those in the spinal cord and brain. So for those of you who know a little bit about mind-body syndrome and neuroplastic pain, I think you may be able to see just from that short description the correlation between some of the triggers for IBS and mind-body syndrome and neuroplastic pain, which I think is actually good news for those of us who do suffer or have suffered from IBS, because it means that we can really take control in reprocessing our irritable bowel syndrome symptoms where they have been caused by mind-body syndrome or neuroplastic pain. So the reason I believe that IBS is often mind-body syndrome or neuroplastic pain is the tendency for IBS patients to have a hyperfocus, a hypersensitivity and a hypervigilance around the way they feel in and around the gut. I know when I had IBS symptoms, even the slightest twinge or sensation in my gut would have me worrying and focusing on it and wondering if I was going to have a flare-up, where most people who don't have IBS or don't have that hypersensitivity or that hyperfocus would just probably not even notice it. As I said in the introduction, IBS is quite common, with statistics saying that around 15% of people in the US suffer from IBS, and here in Australia that's around 11%. The onset of IBS usually occurs before the age of 40, and many people who experience IBS also had symptoms as children. I find with myself and many of my clients, their experience in childhood was that they would often get a sore tummy when things were stressful or changes were made. However, they would get over it quickly because they didn't have that hypervigilance or that hyperfocus. And when their parents said, "It's okay, honey, you'll be okay, just go to bed or have a rest, and when you get up, you'll feel better," that as children we believed that. We weren't in that mind loop of worrying about if we had symptoms, when they go away. We just were more present, and therefore the symptoms tended to go away a lot quicker. So why do I think that IBS is often neuroplastic pain or mind-body syndrome? I'm going to outline a few reasons why I think so. Firstly, with IBS, there is no structural issue. So when patients go and have investigations, often it comes back that the tests are really clear. There's nothing structurally wrong. And more these days, IBS is being described as a nerve problem, which to me sounds very much like what people are experiencing when they have neuroplastic pain or mind-body syndrome. Secondly, there's been a number of research studies done which are so interesting. With people with IBS, they have used a balloon and they have inserted it into their colon and inflated the balloon. So obviously that comes with a feeling of fullness. And what they have found in patients with IBS compared to people who don't have IBS are the following. Visceral hypersensitivity, finding that many IBS clients exhibit heightened sensitivity to balloon distension, experiencing pain or discomfort at lower volumes compared to individuals that don't have IBS. And also psychological factors. Anxiety, stress, and other psychological factors can influence the perception of pain during the balloon distension test, highlighting the brain-gut axis role in IBS. So I think that's really compelling research. And along with that, I also think it's important to look at what we might call the metaphysics of the gut and the way we use language around our gut. Sayings like gut instinct, having butterflies in our tummy, saying "I just can't stomach that," or "we have a knot in our stomach." Also here in Australia, we have a term that you may or may not heard of, which is busting a gut. And when we talk about busting a gut, it means we're working so hard. But to me, when I hear it, it usually indicates that you're working really hard. The person who's busting a gut is working really hard, while everyone else isn't really working hard. They're off having the tea break while I'm busting my gut. So Some really interesting language and things that are very common in our language that we use often that relate to our gut. To me, that indicates the association between emotions and really strong emotions and our gut. And to me, looking at all of these things, it makes sense that we would have issues and pain and discomfort in our gut if we have a lot of emotions or fear that we're trying to process. I think a few common behaviours and traits of people experiencing IBS are worth mentioning. And I know I certainly did experience these when I had IBS symptoms. The first being avoidance. I was very good at deciding that something had caused me pain and symptoms and deciding that I wasn't going to do it anymore. So whether it was eating out, eating cheese, traveling, going to certain places, working long days, whatever it was, I was telling myself that when I did this thing, it equaled symptoms, which would lead to avoidance. And that in itself caused a lot of problems because I wasn't living the life I wanted to live. I was always thinking about, if I do this thing, if I eat this thing, am I going to get symptoms, rather than thinking about whether doing that thing would enrich my life. Leading on from this is also getting stuck in thought patterns. So as I said, the thought might be, if I eat cheese, I'm going to get symptoms. And then we eat the cheese anyway. And so the thought's going around, I ate the cheese, now I'm going to get symptoms. And then we get symptoms. Was it the cheese or was it our thoughts influencing our body, which led to symptoms because we're expecting them? And our brain's extraordinarily clever and gives us what we're thinking about sometimes, which then we get the symptoms, which leads to the belief or reinforces the belief that when I eat cheese, I get symptoms. Just something to consider. For me, like most people who experience IBS, there was a lot of things that I tried to help get rid of my symptoms that didn't work. And I'm sure that some do. And for me, some things that didn't work included being obsessed about what I ate, drastically restricting my diet, including FODMAPs, avoiding places and events where I might feel unwell, acupuncture, energy medicine, and visceral manipulation, trying to make all the stress in my life go away, getting upset and cancelling all of my plans, and not exercising when I had pain. Of course, it's really important to note here that some people, their IBS is absolutely triggered by the food they eat, and it's really important, of course, to investigate this and honour that and change your diet where you need to. However, if you find that you've tried removing FODMAPs, removing dairy, removing gluten, alcohol, all of the usual triggers to IBS, and you're finding that you still have symptoms, it may be worth considering thinking psychologically and perhaps investigating if there is a neuroplastic element to your pain. So when did things start to change for me? I feel like the first key that really changed things for me was when I started to understand the hypervigilance and the hyperfocus that I was having on my symptoms, and that this focus almost created symptoms or made me worry about really normal sensations that we have in our body. Nothing to worry about, just our body doing its job, but I was really hyper-focused in the past, and understanding that's what I was doing, I think, was the first key to noticing and realising and having the opportunity to change my behaviour around what my thoughts were doing in particular. Secondly, was understanding the role fear of my symptoms was playing in my pain and discomfort. So I was definitely in what Alan Gordon would explain in his book, The Way Out, the pain-fear cycle. I was always looking out for symptoms, twinges, sensations, and when I had them, I'd get fearful. I worry about what the sensations meant. I worried that meant that I was going to have a terrible day and it was going to ruin my plans. So I really was fearing what my body was doing and fearing what it would mean for me and my lifestyle. And working through Alan's book, I started to give myself and my body a lot more messages of safety, reminding my body that it was safe, that these sensations, yes, whilst they weren't pleasant, they weren't unsafe. It was just my body doing its job, and really just calming down the nervous system, reminding my mind and body that I was safe. It was a huge key to where I started with getting better. Okay, so moving on to a few more specific things that helped me in my healing from IBS. Firstly, I went and saw a hypnotherapist who specialised in gut-directed hypnotherapy. So working with the gut through the mind-body connection, calming down the nervous system, helping to assure the body and the subconscious mind that it's safe. After having gut-directed hypnotherapy, I then became a hypnotherapist, and I now specialize in gut-directed hypnotherapy, and I get so much joy out of working with clients to bring back that feeling of safety and to reduce the pain. I mentioned earlier the book by Alan Gordon, The Way Out. Just a sensational book for someone like me who was really in that fear pain cycle, and helping me to understand that I was in the fear pain cycle, but also giving me a number of strategies to use when I had pain and when I felt good, to bring that feeling of safety and calm to my body and mind. Something that Alan recommends in his book is somatic tracking. I think somatic tracking is a wonderful way to just tap into our bodies, have that feeling of safety, and realize that sometimes the pain, what we would describe as pain in our body, perhaps when we really tap in, is more of a sensation that we don't need to be scared of. I did a lot of somatic tracking when I realized that my symptoms were related and caused by mind-body syndrome. And I have a favorite track on the app, Insight Timer, by a wonderful meditation teacher called Colin Stewart. And I've added a link to that meditation in the description. And I really recommend it if you think that you might have IBS or any other pain, chronic pain or symptoms that may be caused by mind-body syndrome. It's a really accessible track. I think probably only about 12 or so minutes. So this is more of a light-hearted approach to my body and sensations, and it was deciding to give less of a crap about how it felt. So giving myself messages of safety. And so rather than saying things to myself like, oh no, here's a sensation, here's pain, my day is ruined, I have to cancel all my plans, it was saying to myself, that's interesting. Noticing the feeling, going, oh, there's a bit of pulling, there's a bit of stretching. I'm noticing that feeling and it's okay. My body is safe and I can continue on doing what I'm doing. It's okay, we're safe. So really simple messages of safety, and just first of all, noticing what our brain tends towards, just noticing that our brain is telling us like, oh, this isn't safe, this isn't good, this is going to ruin your plans, and going, okay, thanks mind, I'm noticing that. However, actually, I think it is just a bit of stretching. I think this is a pretty normal sensation. And thanks for your feedback, but I think I'll go on with my day. So really that self-talk, that self-calm, messages of safety, and it can be done in quite a light-hearted way. I kept moving even when I had pain or discomfort. So my tendency in the past, before understanding mind-body syndrome and neuroplastic pain, would be to not exercise, lie down, put a hot water bottle on my tummy. Sometimes that's a great thing. If you really do have pain and discomfort, it's really important to take that rest if you need to. But I tended to just stop everything at the slightest twinge or sensation, when really continuing to exercise probably sometimes was the best thing for me, particularly gentle exercise, walking or yoga or stretching. And if you're more familiar with mind-body syndrome and its foundations, you will know Dr. Sano and potentially know that one of his daily reminders is to keep exercising, because there's nothing structurally wrong and it's not going to hurt you to exercise. And it is really important, I think, for mind-body to keep moving. And I think it also gives our body the signal of safety, because we're safe enough to continue moving and continue going on with our day as we normally would. I'm also a big fan of acceptance and commitment therapy, known as ACT, which is all about psychological safety and flexibility. And I find there's a lot of correlation between ACT and pain reprocessing. So I use a lot of ACT with myself and with my clients. And some of the basic things that we do and where we start is just really noticing, like I said, what our mind is doing, perhaps thanking our mind for its thoughts, but going on and living a meaningful life and doing what's important to us. There's a lot involved in ACT and the ways it can be used when we're experiencing pain and discomfort. So I'll actually do another video dedicated to ACT and ACT strategies that have really helped me and my clients. So there are just a few strategies that you might like to use if you're experiencing IBS and if you suspect that it's being caused by mind-body syndrome or neuroplastic pain. I've also made some recommendations of some different resources that you might like to use, and I've got those in the comments. If you'd like to hear more about me and what I do, my website is also linked there, and I would encourage you to like and subscribe to my video. That would be much appreciated, and thank you for listening.